You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
The options market can be a confusing place. Sorting through the daily avalanche of data, alerts, updates, articles, and analysis to find the most important information is an overwhelming prospect. But now you have help. Welcome to the Options News Rundown, the only program that breaks through the noise to bring you the most important news and information from the world of options. Every day we bring you the top 5 option stories curated by the options experts at theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for free options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in option trader education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's live Advantage group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider. And now it's time to break through the noise. It's time for your Options News Rundown.
Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. This is your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Our first story today is from investing.com. It's the top 5 things to know in the market on Wednesday. The first thing to know is bellwether earnings to grab attention. Even as disappointing guidance from the likes of Caterpillar, 3M, and Lockheed Martin was blamed for the shadow cast over stocks a day earlier, a deluge of reports from bellwether firms will likely continue to focus attention on Wednesday in a session with no major economic reports. In a notable exception to the downbeat outlook, shares of Texas Instruments soared more than 5% in the after-hours market after the semiconductor company gave guidance for the current quarter that beat on both the top and bottom line. Second thing to know is the 10-year Treasury yields continue to rise. After closing a day earlier above the 3% symbolic threshold, and the upward momentum in the yield on 10-year Treasuries continued on Wednesday. The yield, which moves inversely to bond prices, was last up 1.2%, or at 3.018%, just off an intraday high of 3.032%, its highest level since January of 2014. Many analysts pinned the 3% level as the point at which bond yields would begin to damage equities. Rising bond yields can crimp demand for assets perceived as riskier, such as stocks, particularly when those yields are higher than those of equities. Third thing to know is stocks continue in risk-off mode ahead of earnings and yield pressure. World shares were on their longest losing streak of the year Wednesday as a rise in the U.S. bond yields above 3% and warnings from top global firms about rising costs fed fears a boom in earnings may have peaked. After the sharp sell-off seen a day earlier, U.S. futures pointed to a move lower on Wednesday as bond yields continued to pressure equities and investors looked for respite from a deluge on earnings reports. Fourth thing to note today is the dollar hits a 7-week high as yields rise. The U.S. dollar rose to 7-week highs against the currency basket on Wednesday. It's driven by rising U.S. Treasury yields, with the U.S. 10-year bond yield passing the 3% level, as we already read. The U.S. dollar index rose 0.21% to 90.75 by 5:57 a.m. Eastern Time. That was off an intraday high of 90.89, its highest level since March 1st. And the fifth thing to note today is oil is steady below its 3-year high. Crude oil prices were little changed in early action on Wednesday, steadying below the more than 3-year highs reached the previous session, as investors looked ahead to fresh weekly data on U.S. commercial crude inventories to gauge the strength of demand in the world's largest oil consumer and how fast output levels will continue to rise. Our next story today is from NASDAQ.com. Gold price likely to fall further as U.S. dollar reigns. Gold's path of least resistance is still lower. Gold's attraction continues to fall in the face of rising U.S. Treasury yields and nears a couple of interesting support levels, which if broken will leave the precious metal near the $1,300 an ounce level. In the U.S. Treasury space, the closely watched two-year currency yields 2.5%, while the benchmark 10-year is at or around the headline prompting 3%, while the U.S. dollar index currently trades at its highest level since January 12. Yields have risen continually over the last year as expectations of higher U.S. rates have hardened, with analysts expecting another 2 or 3/4% hikes this year. Market expectations of 3 further hikes currently standing at 48%. Higher U.S. interest rates draw money away from non-interest-bearing gold. And our next story here today is from agriculture.com. In the grains, wheat extends gains, soybeans and corn prices face pressure from U.S. weather. Chicago wheat futures rose for a second session on Wednesday as investors looked for bargains, although plentiful world supplies capped gains. Soybeans and corn prices also gained ground, but both markets expect to remain under pressure as crop-friendly warm weather, boosts planting across the U.S. Midwest. Chicago Board of Trade most active contract was up 0.5% at $4.8675 a bushel by 3:01 Greenwich Mean Time. In the previous session, it closed 2% higher after hitting a one-week low of $4.6775 a bushel during the trade. Soybeans added 0.5% to 10.3875 a bushel, and corn gained 0.4% at 391.5. There's some short covering and bargain buying in the wheat market, said one Indian-based commodities analyst. People are looking to determine the extent of damage to the U.S. winter crop. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is news you can use for Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. Your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli, Trade Smart, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Options News Rundown. To learn more about these stories or any other developments from the world of options, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for free options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in option trader education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's live Advantage group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.